Hey, so I'm going to talk to you about snoring and sleep apnea or obstructive sleep apnea. And what that is when snoring gets so bad that it makes you suffocate in your sleep. And it's much more common than you might think. 9% of women and 27% of men aged between 30 and 50 have it. And that goes up to 43% of women and 51% of men aged 50 to 70 have sleep apnea. So there are a lot of people out there who are really struggling with snoring and not breathing at night. And that's a real problem, not just for our partners who we may be stressing out and keeping awake all night, but it's also really disruptive for our heart. When the heart has to beat much harder throughout the night, you are stressing the heart and you're not letting yourself rest either. And if you're someone who, breathes really heavily, then snores a bit, and then kind of wakes yourself up, that means you're interrupting your sleep, you're not getting into REM sleep, you're not getting into deep sleep, and all sorts of problems start to happen in that scenario. And I have said many times that I really wonder how many mental health issues like anxiety and depression would go away if we helped people to sleep better and to give themselves more time to sleep. You can think of snoring and how it works in the throat like a straw. When you have a straw and you are not sucking any liquid through it, if you suck really hard, that straw collapses and no air can go through no matter how hard you are sucking. And if you do the same with the throat, i.e. you inhale really turbulently and really forcefully, then the various things happen, like the tongue falls down. There's basically 4 different ways that the throat collapses. The tongue is one of them, the epiglottis is another, and different soft parts of the throat collapse, and that creates that collapsed tissue. And this is how we are going to frame the idea of snoring using this throat like straw analogy. So we're going to have 3 approaches to fixing the snoring. The first one is going to be the focus on nasal breathing. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll probably be sick of me talking about nasal breathing, but it is just so important. In the context of snoring, if you think about how easy it is to snore through your mouth compared to your nose, that's one reason. So if you go ahead and try and snore through your mouth, it's really easy. Close your mouth and try snoring through your nose. It's possible, but it's much harder, and that is the reason we want to make sure we are nasal breathing day and night. So the first thing you can do is to remind yourself when you're awake to breathe through the nose. And at night, the strategy for keeping the nose breathing going is mouth taping, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in this photo. So you'll have seen that image of me with tape over my mouth, and this tape, 3M microspore tape, is what I use. You can get it from a pharmacy or Amazon, and you can just use any tape, any surgical tape, CrossFit tape, scary goat tape, whatever you need. And if you have any anxiety about this, because maybe it does seem a little bit weird, you can just wear it for 20 minutes before you go to bed and see how easy it is to get used to it. And you can see that I can still kind of talk out of the sides of my mouth, and I can still breathe through the sides of my mouth, and that didn't even hurt that much. But you don't need to worry, because in an emergency you can speak and you can breathe through the side of your mouth. And you may think, oh well, what's the point then? I'll just breathe through the side of my mouth. The point is just to remind yourself when you're unconscious to keep breathing through the nose. And if you're a really, really strong mouth breather, you may blow the tape off at night. We may lick it. I've done that. But you just need to keep going back to it and retraining your unconscious sleeping self to carry on with the tape. You'll know if you are a mouth breather if you are someone who wakes up with bad breath or a dry mouth or drool on your pillow, all suggesting that you're breathing through your mouth during the daytime. And another reason why breathing through your nose is so much better is because when you are breathing through your mouth, you are losing a lot more moisture through the breath, and that creates dryness in the mouth, and that creates inflammation in the throat, and inflammation makes our straw, the passageway between our straw, our throat, even smaller. The second step is going to be about opening up the nasal passageway. So you would have seen in that photo me wearing one of these nasal strips. Breathe Right nasal strips. Again, Amazon pharmacy, very easy, pretty cheap considering how effective they are. And if you're someone with a small nose or small nasal passageway, this can be really helpful. And yeah, again, if you have a deviated septum, which a lot of people do, then this can really be helpful, because if it's easier to breathe through our nose, we're not going to default to breathing through our mouth. Step 3 is going to be making sure you sleep on your side. Why? Because when you sleep on your back, the tongue can fall back into the throat and collapse the throat and mean that we have to snore and make those horrible noises. And one study showed that people with sleep apnea who slept on their back had twice as many apnea events per hour as those who sleep on their side. And the fourth step, and probably the most important one because it has so much carry over to all areas of our life, is to make sure you are breathing in a functional way, because if you're breathing dysfunctionally in the daytime, then you are most certainly going to be breathing dysfunctionally at night time. So what is functional breathing? Light, slow and deep. So really light. So light, if you can hear your breathing, then that is a sign you're not breathing light. We want to breathe slow as well. So you can imagine, if you imagine you have a feather, you don't want to be ruffling a feather below your nose, and you want to be breathing deep. So you're still breathing diaphragmatically, but you are not doing it chaotically. So the ideal breath ratio is about 4.5 to 6 breaths per minute, which equates to about 5 seconds on the inhale and 5 seconds on the exhale, with a little bit of a pause after the exhale. That is the ideal breath, and there are ways to train that. I will speak about those in future videos, or you can of course book a one-to-one with me. Hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions.